Good evening and welcome to this week's edition of Roundtable Talk. Of course, you may realize that we are well into the hurricane season. It commenced on June 1 and will run until November 30. To help us talk about that and more this evening, we have the Director of NEMO, Michelle Forbes. Welcome back again, Michelle. And forecaster at the local Met Office, Gregory Cato. And Gregory, I want to start with you and ask you, what is the forecast for this year's hurricane season? What can we expect?
Okay, a pleasant good evening to you, to the folks at VC3 and our viewers. As aforementioned, my name is Gregory Cato. I am a forecaster assigned at the Argyle International Airport. If I'm to just give a bit of highlight as for, the previous season, 2021, there were 15 to 21 named storms according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that's NOAA. They predicted 7 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 5 major hurricanes. They were actually 100% accurate. In fact, there were 21 named storms. When we mention storms, we're speaking about where winds are in excess of 39 miles per hour, between 39 to 73 miles per hour. 7 hurricanes, which winds are in excess of 74 miles per hour, and 4 being major hurricanes. Of the 7 hurricanes, the winds are in excess of 111 miles per hour. As for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we were impacted by Hurricane Elsa on July the 2nd, to be exact. The center moved to the north of the island, and we received some damage to homes and infrastructure, as well as some downed utility poles, loss to crops and livestock and so forth. There were about 250 houses that sustained damages as a result, and most of these damages were mainly to roofs. For this season, 2022, we are looking at the possibility of having 14 to 21 storms, 6 to 10 major hurricanes, and 3 to 6 major hurricanes. 6 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 6 major hurricanes. So we can expect a very busy season ahead.
So a very busy season, you say. Michelle, how has NEMO prepared? Is NEMO ready for this very busy hurricane season?
Good evening, Teresa, and good evening, listeners. We are ready all season. I think we have come out of just focusing on one season only, as we have seen, especially over the last 2 years, a multiplicity of hazards that have impacted St. Vincent and the Grenadines, from the natural hazards to the pandemic. And we are at a state where we don't want to, as we know, we have the hurricane season to contend with 6 months of the year. We have to be prepared for any eventuality throughout the entire year. So while during this time we tend to focus a little bit, yes, on the hazards that can come out of a hurricane, we tend to be prepared all year for any event. So we have been doing quite a bit of efforts throughout the year. We have, of course, focused on our logistics support system, looking at how we, in the event of an emergency, even prior, to ensure that we have our logistics support system going. And we have been partnering with, for example, like CDMA and the World Food Program. That's a big issue for us, looking at our warehousing and ensuring that we have the adequate supplies and the systems to actually manage these relief supplies, throughout the country. So that's one part. We continue with our public information and awareness program. We would have had a first drive in May, prior to the start of the hurricane season, and just at the start of the hurricane season, we'll up it again as we peak around August into September, around the peak of the hurricane season. So we continue our awareness programs throughout the country. We continue working on our community preparedness, because community is really, all disasters are local, and that's where we need to have that community support coming in. So we are meeting with different communities throughout the country. Some have actually had their meetings, and we are there to support and then our support to the community activities to ensure that the communities are at a state of readiness too, because readiness begins with each and every one of us. And of course, at the national level, we coordinate with a host of agencies to ensure that they too are ready to support the national system.
Okay, you mentioned that the agency which predicts hurricanes was 100% accurate last year, right?
That's correct.
What is the synergy between that organization and your Met Services?
Could you repeat?
What is the synergy that exists between? Yes.
Okay, we rely on them because Well, the GFS model that we use is basically American, and they have an invested interest, you can say, in the storms that affect us, because from us it's straight on to them. So we rely on them.
Okay, so you do your own forecasting?
Yes, we
as
do.
well?
We do, of course. We do analysis on a daily basis. We get, for example, the morning weather report, the afternoon weather report, the evening weather report, are all forecasts that are being done, conducted at the Met Office as well.
Okay.
And apart from that, we are in an aeronautical observation station. So basically what you're getting at 6 p.m. is something that we're doing constantly throughout the day.
Okay. How does the weather impact us?
Okay. Well, it impacts us. It's a key driver in most of the decision making. Even the very close you weigh is as you weigh this as a result because of basically the weather. So you wouldn't be outside in a forecoat based on, well, according to where you're living. For example, in the Caribbean, right? If you're in the Arctic regions, however, it will be totally different, something different. The food you eat, the type of crops that you would grow, you would plant more resilient crops in times where you would have, for example, a drought situation. So, as aforementioned, it's basically a key driver in just about anything for travel. Even, well, I mentioned before that we are an aeronautical observation station. So on each, well, we conduct observations on the hour, every hour, for the safe landing and taking off of aircraft. And next to whatever we send out, it's called a meta, right? We also append what is called a trend forecast, which basically gives the pilot an idea as to what would happen within the next 2 hours. So these are information, as I mentioned, that are very important, well, going forward.
Okay. Tell us at this particular juncture where we are in terms of names, storms and hurricanes and so far. Where are we? Which ones have already gone and what do we expect?
Okay, so far there's been 3 storms, Alex, Bonnie and Colin. On the 28th of June, we were affected by potential tropical cyclone number 2, which eventually became Bonnie and went on to affect, I believe, the south of Nicaragua, right? But we experienced some strong winds around that time during the night. There were some down lines, electricity, some power outages in some communities, and that was as a result of that. We also went on a flash flood watch and a high wind advisory, a small craft warning as well. And because around that time, because we had winds in excess of 40 miles per hour winds, what you have when you have these winds blowing over the sea surface, it agitates the water surface, so it made it quite difficult for persons commuting by ships and, well, boats. And we also advised seabathers to stay out of the water, but at that point the seas were pretty much moderate to rough.
Okay, tell us the difference between tropical cyclone, storm, hurricane. What's the difference?
Okay, so a disturbance, basically. So a disturbance is like an low pressure system with organized convection. When we speak about convection, we're speaking about showers, right? It should be it should have an identity for about within a 24-hour period or even more. A cyclone is a deep organized system, low pressure system, again with organized convection, with a closed circulation about the center. Right. So when you hear about depression, storm, hurricane, the only difference is basically the wind speeds. So they are all basically cyclones. However, the wind speed vary according to what the specific feature is. So, for example, a depression, we're speaking about 38 miles per hour or less. When we speak about storm, we're speaking about between 39 to 73 miles per hour. And the hurricane goes beyond 74 and beyond, major hurricane 111, and so forth.
Okay. What is the difference between a tropical storm warning and a hurricane warning and a watch?
Okay. So when we speak about a watch, I'll leave the watch for us, right? So a watch, basically, you're expecting, if it's a tropical storm, we're saying that we're expecting tropical storm conditions within the next 36 to 48 hours. So you have a bit of time to prepare, right? Once we speak about warning, we are saying it's either occurring already or imminent. So you have basically between a 24 to 36 hour period. The response, however, to both, whichever we actually have issued at the time, should be your response actually. Because during the time of, say, a warning, we don't expect you to be putting up shutters and so forth. You should have already have that done, basically.
Okay, so run the stages for us again so that people understand better.
Okay, so a watch basically states, if you're under a tropical storm watch, we're expecting tropical storm conditions within 24 to 36 hours. Right? Sorry, between 36 to 48 hours, sorry, watch.
Okay.
Right? So you have some time to prepare. We should be saying prepare for this. Whereas for the warning, we are saying that hurricane warning, we are saying that hurricane conditions are either imminent or expected within the next 24 to 36 hours. So at that point, you should have been prepared already.
Okay, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to talk about NEMO. When does NEMO step in, and role and function of the organization? We'll be back in just a moment.
On Friday, July 15th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $465,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $465,000.
Hi, I'm Chanel Mackenzie. You know we Vincy love the beach. We are surrounded by water, so we must be tsunami smart. I brought along some of my musical brothers to enlighten you about the warning signs of a tsunami.
SVG, my name is Rodney Small. If you're liming or entertaining on the beach and feel a strong shaking, run.
My Vincy people, this is your boy Luther. If you're on the beach, vibing on a new rhythm, writing a new song, or whatever you're doing, and see the water starts receding, run to higher ground.
Hey, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I'm Bomani. If you're on the beach cooking a pot and you hear a strange roar from the sea, run.
If you ever experience any of those signs my musical brothers told you about, just run, run, run. You may just be saving your own life. Be tsunami smart.
Welcome back, Michelle. Before we took the break, Gregory was explaining the different characteristics of storms vis-a-vis hurricanes, etc. What is the relationship between the Met Office and your organization, your office, and why is there need for there to be very close interaction?
Okay, the Met Office is responsible for any early warning on any hydrometeorological hazard, first of all, and we have a very close relationship with them because we have to anticipate what is happening and prepare for the next. So we are constantly in collaboration, working collaboration with Billy and his team. Gregory is one who contacts us frequently as a forecaster, and from the time, and I want to probably go you through the development of a system from the time we see something, any type of disturbance in the Atlantic or anything nearby affecting us, we are always speaking to each other and looking at the potential, the trajectory. What does it mean for St. Vincent if it develops into a further? I will do my own research too, but I do have I allow the forecasters to really guide me. So even before a system develops or warning or watch is given, we are informed ahead of the general information that goes out. So we can actually start our pre-preparation before the actual release or alert is given. So we will inform the relevant persons, relevant stakeholders that we are watching and monitoring something. First of all, we inform our staff that what is happening. So we have that constant collaboration because we have to have kind of the expectation of what is going to happen with this particular system, what's it going to bring to the country, what it means, if it's a heavy rainfall event versus a wind event, whether it's going to go north, affect the northern communities, is it going to come south across the Grenadines. So these are the kind of constant dialogue we have with the Met Services. And, you know, it has really improved over the years. Teresa, you hear Gregory saying that they can do their own forecast now, and despite we have to, before we can give an official warning or forecast, we have to collaborate with Barbados. We have a staff now at the Met Services that can actually do that themselves, that can actually even prompt Barbados to say, hey, this is not what it's looking like for St. Vincent. And they can actually have that one-on-one conversation with Barbados. Even now, they actually do in on the conversations with the National Hurricane Center too, when they have the dialogue with Barbados to determine what is going to happen for St. Vincent. So we rely heavily on the Met Services to really guide us on what is happening and what we can expect in terms of the weather or system that is approaching, so that we can tailor our message and tailor our preparedness to really suit the potential hazards that can actually impact the country. So that relationship is quite solid and tight between both entities.
Okay. When does NEMO step in? When a storm or a hurricane approaches, at what point do you get involved?
Well, we're involved all the time, but we get involved with the public once the Met Services have issued the alert. Once they have issued the alert to the public, then we step in and further we broadcast the alert, because they may not have all our communities, for example, that we focus on all the businesses or different sections of the population. So it is our job to ensure that the information that the Met Office disseminate to the media, to the public, we kind of re-emphasize the information that they distribute or disseminate, and ensure that all stakeholders across the country have information on what they are saying, because sometimes, you know, people don't really pay attention. They also use the same platforms that we use. The Met Services can actually send the alert on the cap.cap for themselves. So if they're going to issue a tropical storm watch or warning, they can actually see that alert from themselves on the cap.cap that is managed by NEMO. They also have access, so they do issue those alerts. So they can issue it or we can issue it, and 90% of the times they issue it unless they can't access it. So from the time the Met Office disseminates that information, broadcasts it publicly, then we step in also and take that same information, maybe tailor it a little bit so that what people can impact. Look at the impact-based forecasting. If you're having a system coming across with heavy rains, disturbance, then you will see us focus on the floods, the lahars, people in prone to landslide areas. If we have the system having high seas, and we focus on the coastal areas, the coastal communities, etc., the high winds, where we focus on everyone, because can have high winds throughout the country, and of course especially those at higher elevation. So it depends on the system, depends on the information that the Met Office is saying to us. Then we look at the hazards that can be more prevalent as the disturbance or the storm or whatever approaching. So we have to tailor that. So we basically step in there and actually work with the Met Services on promulgating the information. We then of course we constantly in contact with the chairman of the National Emergency Council, who in our case is our Minister and Prime Minister, and we constantly, Billy and myself will actually meet with him, discuss with him on what we think that is happening and what we can expect, and advise him of what we think or recommend, what we think the next steps that he should make. Of course, the ultimate decision is his in terms of what we do as a country as we get closer, as the system get closer. We contact all of our agencies on the national system. We have over 30 agencies on the national system. We contact the communities, all the communities, organizations. We collaborate with the Red Cross. We also collaborate with, with the businesses, especially because we know that they're a critical stakeholder, especially if persons need to have their supplies. We may ask them, okay, can you open an hour extra because we expect Y or Z. So it's a constant collaboration, a constant preparedness. We contact the Ministry of Education, for example, to let them know that ahead there's a possibility that the shelters will have to be activated. So it's quite a lot of, it gets quite busy and hectic once the Met Office gives that information, and we need to ensure that we have everything in place in the event that it actually increases its intensity as it approaches us, or we start to have the impact of one of the hazards, whether it's heavy rainfall, heavy wind, or the rough seas.
You spoke about CAP. What exactly is that?
CAP is an application. It's an early warning application that you can download on your device. You can also sign up for emails, cap.cap, and you can download it, and it gives you an alert whenever we use it last year exclusively for the volcanic eruption. We use it with hydrometeorological events, a flood watch, a flood warning. If there's a cyclone approaches, the warning and so on, and we give you tips on what to do. So you can download that app on your phone, and also to get those alerts from the Met Services on email that comes in. So we want to encourage persons to that. We also have what we call a MyHaz app. That's a new app that was developed in collaboration with the Seismic Research Centre and the universities, the UK Geological Services, in terms of you can actually get the alert on that too, and you can actually feed back information to us on where you are. If you see something happening, you can upload photos and so on, so we can actually have a bit of situational awareness of what is happening in and around the country, especially if there's an impact on event ongoing. So there are different applications you can use to send information to us and also receive information from us.
So these are two applications that people can actually download.
Yes.
Onto their smartphone,
their devices.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the cap.cap is available all the time. So
that's cap.
cap.cap. Cap.cap.
Okay, and the other is MyHaz app. MyHaz app. Mm-hmm. Okay. So those are two things. Now every year we go through this. NEMO. What is its mandate and function? What is the role of NEMO? Let's talk some more about that again.
NEMO, the National Emergency Management Organization, where we sit, is really the office, the secretariat, where we sit. We have right now about 19-20 staff, and we are responsible for coordinating disaster management activities. And I say the word coordinate. We coordinate the programs, activities that deals with disaster risk reduction in general in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, you have different sectors that may lead different programs that falls in terms of building our national resilience, and we quite align our work to what we call our country work program, ensuring that we have our priorities that we need to promote for the next 5 years. And we just came out of finalizing our country work program in June, meeting with the key stakeholders. So we are a coordinating agency with different agencies having a different role within the national system. So you have the Ministry of National Mobilization, you have the Ministry of Transport and Works, and they have specific roles and functions under that national system. So for example, if you have an impact by a storm, the assessment is being coordinated by the Ministry of Transport and Works. The Office of the Chief Engineer conducts that assessment to ensure that every building that has reported any damage, any infrastructure, whatever, that is recorded and documented, so we can have that information, and we have to package that and basically prioritize to some extent and recommend any actions that need to be taken from the various sectors. Of course, it goes to the cabinet level, and if resources are needed, then that is being determined by that policy level. So the shelter management process is coordinated by the Ministry of Education. Of course, we work with them on doing the training. They identify the shelter managers, we train the shelter managers. So we're really a coordinating agency. If your house is damaged, for example, we document it, we ensure that information is with the Ministry of Housing. So it's not that NEMO is the one who actually does your repairs or rebuild your house. And many persons tend to think that is what we do. We don't. So, if it's an issue where you have a rotten roof or so on, on. There are various agencies that have that particular function that we tell you, okay, no, you need to go to that. So everybody, it's not a one-stop all where you think that NEMO does everything. We are a coordinating agency, but we work very closely with all the agencies of government, even the NGO community, the private sector, in promoting our programs and promoting national resilience, because it's really a resilience building exercise that the next event we will not be set 5 steps backwards. So that constant collaboration, that constant working with each agency, locally, regionally, internationally, to really build our capacity at the national level.
Do you have a challenge getting people to not have the perception that NEMO is not a social welfare development agency type of thing? How difficult is that for you to
It is
manage?
difficult, and I think we just have to continue to demonstrate through the other agencies that they do work and support the whole national system. And we just look at the 2021 events. There were key agencies that would have, like the Ministry of National Mobilization, that led the support to the families, like the support to the communities, like the psychosocial support in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, with the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education did a wonderful job in terms of coordinating the emergency shelters. So we are not the one that necessarily speak directly to the shelter managers. I probably only come in when it reaches a real critical level. Maybe there's a problem, then they'll say, okay, hey, we're not getting anywhere with this, and we have to have a solution. So I would not be the one directly speaking to the shelter managers, that kind of thing. That's the Ministry of Education will do that. And if there are challenges, because we have what we call the National Emergency Operations Center, that we once there's an emergency, we activate that system. So we are there 24 hours speaking to each other in the same room, coordinating with each other. So if there's a problem, we can actually solve it together. So and we do have our briefings at the end of the day, morning and evening, so we can see the challenges that we're having. And it's a constant challenge. People thinking that we have the food, we have everything that we have to give the persons, but we try our best to really coordinate with the agencies, and it is our job to ensure that there are things that we have to ensure that we have a continued supply of for the next emergency. So we can't give away everything we have one time. And we have to plan that whole resource mobilization planning before the start of the hurricane season. We have to see what we have in stock. Do we have enough X, Y, or Z? That if we have a flood event, we know that we're going to lose a lot of mattresses, a lot of things that we have to ensure at least we have an adequate supply. I know one of the challenges we have now is warehouse space, because we have really exceeded our warehouse space, and we are working feverishly on getting new warehouses in country. We will be doing one in Barely in particular, with support from the U.S. government. And we're going to retrofit our warehouse in Camden Park, so we have to move temporarily from that. And we are looking also on having a big national warehouse that will really support the type of activity that you saw happening at the E.T. Joshua Timer class here. That's the type of warehouse you really need now to support the country, because with the bigger events that we are having, the bigger storms, the mega events, the more intense storms, you are seeing 20% of the population, 18% of the population being displaced. And as an organization, we have to start changing and looking at being able to provide for that number of persons.
We'll talk some more about that when we come back from this, our second break. Back in a moment.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. $490,000. That's the Super 6 jackpot. From midday, Friday, July 15th. It's $490,000. More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. Only reading is the key, so help them read, learn, grow. Let's show them how much fun it is to read, learn, grow. So parents, you play your part. First and foremost, reading from so young is advantageous. Link with the teachers, working hand in hand is a must. Just 10 minutes of your child reading to you is a plus. Get fun books, make reading priority.
When children read, they are able to learn, and the more they learn, the more they grow. So parents help the kids read, learn, grow. Reading is fun, kids have to know.
Read, learn, grow. The children are the future. Help them read, learn, grow. So parents, you play a part.
This message is brought to you by the OECS USAID Early Learners Program, funded by United States Agency for International Development. For more information, log on to www.oecs.org/ELP.
Welcome back. Michelle, you were talking about the need to upgrade and reinforce existing structures, and that plans are actually underway for that to occur. Tell me, what is the difference in preparing for a hazard such as a hurricane compared to the hazard that we faced last year? Yeah?
Okay,
are there any differences?
There's a big difference. I think for me, where I sat, the difference was how quickly things escalated. You can prepare as much as you can until the event happens, really. That's in the case of a volcanic emergency, because we knew it would happen at some point, we just didn't know when. And we constantly prepare. At least since I went to NEMO, we were always doing public education awareness, improving our volcano emergency plans, having testing it in terms. We did that through the trade winds exercise, and actually knowing at that point there will be a point when the scientists say to you, "Hey, I can't provide you any more information. This is it for This is it. It could go either way right now." And from that, saying that to you, for you to advise, "Hey, we need to raise the alert level to ready and evacuate now." It moves so quickly. That's something that you have to experience yourself to really understand it. Mm-hmm. In terms of hurricane now, we know that we have it every year. We can, whether it's heavy rainfall, the strong winds, and the rough seas. That you're constantly doing. You can anticipate what you're going to get to some extent. Expect, of course, if it's a major storm, a major hurricane. I don't want to see a major hurricane. Category 4, category 3 and above. But you can you plan and you see what you plan for these things until really you actually experience it yourself. So for the hurricanes and the storms, it's something that we are more familiar with, more frequent events that we can we anticipate the impact. But yet I don't think that some of us are really paying attention to how bad it can be. We tend to think that every system is going north, but we have seen the last few years, I don't know what Greg would think, we have seen some trends in terms of the early part of the season, the systems dipping south. Mm-hmm. And if they dip south, they have to rise. Mm-hmm. And there may be one that just rise and come directly at us, and we have to pay attention to these different trends, because the climate has already changed. The increase in temperatures, we have had increasing temperatures in the last 6 years. Every year has been hotter than the year before. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing the increased ocean temperatures, and we are going to have more intense storms. We're seeing the increasing drought, and I don't think we're paying a lot of attention to the drought. It's getting drier. It has gotten drier. We are going to get more Sahara dust events. I mean, when we were growing up, I'm sure once in a year we would have had the Sahara dust phenomena. But it's like almost entire year now that you have to deal with it, and we need to pay attention to this changing environment that we're in, and we have to adapt to it. And sometimes you feel as if when you adapt to one thing, you get hit by another, and we just don't know. There's so much uncertainty in what is going to happen during a hurricane season that we have to constantly prepare for the worst. Because God forbid that we do have a major event, how are you going to deal with it? We prepare, we do our best in terms of our training and to anticipate what is going to come. But until it really happens, we really want persons to pay attention, because we just don't know when we're going to have that next big one impacting us. And I don't think we have really had a direct impact from a storm for over 100 years. Mm-hmm. We have not had one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As a forecaster, what exactly do you do?
Okay, so there are a number of competencies that we must meet. as a forecaster, we must analyze and monitor constantly the weather situation. That's one. We must warn of hazardous phenomena. We must maintain a quality service. That is, we follow standards set by the World Met Organization, right? And we must communicate the information both internally and externally. So internally, we may say things like, okay, there's some divergence here, that kind of stuff, jargon that we would use in office. However, when we relay this information to the public, we would say something like, we do have a favorable upper level environment, and we may use terms such as moderate to heavy showers, but we would say deep convection in-house. And of course, we must forecast.
Okay, so if there's any young person wanting to get into the field, what would you advise them? What would be your advice to them?
Okay, for sure, you must have some math and physics because you're going to meet it a lot, right? But if it's what you really love, I'm pretty sure you would be on the right path. But ensure that you do have that math and physics as a background. Okay.
Michelle, back to Nemo and all the challenges that is facing. I know that you're involved in some training at this particular juncture. So what does that training entail?
We have been doing quite a lot this year, Teresa. We have come out of really analyzing where we are in terms of our national disaster management structure, and we have tailored a lot of our programs for this 2022 and beyond in upgrading and improving our national system. Of course, it's not going to happen overnight. We would have, in collaboration with the World Food Programme recently, we would have conducted our equipment training in terms of how do we set up tents, how do we use certain equipment, how do we basically mobilize in the event of an emergency. And we would have had different volunteers across the public sector, and of course NGOs participating with us in that training, and we're going to continue that into the year, because we're going to do training in forklift operations, and we have planned for the community how to operate a chainsaw. Those little things, because we saw an incident last year where somebody got killed from operating a chainsaw, how to operate generators. So we have a cadre of persons who are going to go out in the communities, do that type of little training, and how to set up a tent and those kind of things, because we think it's important that persons understand how to do use this what we see now as a basic equipment in the community, because we may not be there, or somebody from the office may not be there, so we have to look at building that capacity at the community level. We just had one of our engineer, seismic engineer, participating in a drone training in Barbados along with Gregory, and that one is really to help us look at the damage assessment and the change in landscape, especially even after the volcano landscape is changing, and how do we be able to use a drone in a quick fashion to really scan a small area that has been impacted and be able to capture that information that we need to actually do a quick situation analysis of what has happened in terms of the impact. And we hope to have several of our staff continue that training in-house over the next month or two. In terms of that training, we are looking at our whole humanitarian tracking system in collaboration again with the World Food Programme, in terms of when information comes in, how it is captured, and ensure that it is captured correctly and disseminated to the relevant agencies so they can act on it. So tomorrow we're meeting again on our logistics system, looking to ensure that our inventory is up to date, and how we're going to continue using the current software that we use in terms of inventory management. So there's quite a lot happening. In training we would have conducted, we spoke about the public information education outreach program, what we call the whistle stop. That we had some of that, and that will continue. We're also looking at the whole crisis communication part of it. How do we communicate during a crisis, and because that is one area I think we fell down quite a bit in NASA, and communicated after the event, not so much before it. I think we did a good job before the event, but how do you continue that communication with the public during an event, or you experiencing that event? So it's quite a lot happening on the ground. We are also focusing on upgrading our National Emergency Operations Center, where we have to do some work. So maybe early in the new year we'll have to move from there. So because we have to do some work, we're also doing some work at the Belmont Observatory, upgrading our warehouse facility. So there's quite a lot happening within the organization.
I know there are standard operating procedures for each hazard, for every hazard. What are the procedures for a storm or a hurricane?
Okay, the standard operating procedures for storms or hurricanes, they're in phases. So we have a 72-hour SOP that says what the actions that you have to take and the agencies have to take during that 72-hour period. And
an SOP would be?
Standard operating procedures. Okay. A standard operating procedure that basically says what each of us have to do at every step of the way. The roles, responsibilities, and actions, that you need to take. So we have one at a 72-hour, then we have another one at a 36, and we have just a pre-impact. Just before the pre-impact, normally we tend to, as part of our national procedures, we tend to have what we call a National Emergency Council meeting, maybe between 24, just before, not 24 hours at least, to determine how ensure that all the agencies are ready. It's like a roll call to ensure that we have put things in place and what needs to be done before a final decision is made and what is going to happen next. So, the procedures are there, they're clear. They've always been there at the different stages to guide us as agencies, not just the NEMO Secretariat, but all the agencies of government, the private sector that have a role within the national system.
Okay, Billy, I think this one is for you. I'm calling you Billy. Gregory. Gregory, what do the different categories of hurricanes mean and what are the criteria?
Okay, so the different categories of hurricane. As I mentioned earlier, the difference with the hurricanes is basically the speeds.
Mm-hmm.
I have the categories here. The Category 1 hurricane, it's from 74 miles per hour up to, I believe, 119. I have that information, but I'm not able to access it.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
But once we speak about Category 1 hurricane, it's basically from 74 miles per hour up. But a major hurricane is from when you have winds in excess of 101 miles per hour.
Okay, that's it?
Yeah, actually, I have the information. But
okay, well, we'll give you a chance to bring up that information. We'll take the break, and when we come back, you'll have that ready for us. Yeah. Back in just a moment as we take our final break for the evening.
On Friday, July 15th, there'll be thousands of dollars to be won. A lotto jackpot of $465,000. A new home, car, or that college education.
Lotto, you have to be in it to win it.
Next lotto jackpot, $465,000.
Diabetes is among the top 3 leading causes of death. Are you living with diabetes? If so, you may be at risk for developing complications, especially during this COVID pandemic. Let's tackle this problem by complying with taking your medication, increasing your physical activities, eating a balanced and nutritious diet, checking your feet as foot care is important, and contacting your healthcare provider. Remember, diabetes can lead to blindness, amputation, and numerous harmful and life-threatening effects. Protect yourself. Know your numbers. Hearts Movement SVG reminds you to love your body and treat it right. Your health, a shared responsibility.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. $490,000. That's the Super 6 jackpot. From midday, Friday, July 15th. It's $490,000. More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way. Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Welcome back. Before we took the break, Gregory, you were looking for some information, read the various categories of hurricanes and the criteria.
Okay, yes. So the difference between the different categories are actually the wind speeds, as in where they range from and to. So for example, a category 1 hurricane would have winds in excess of 74 miles per hour, however it does not exceed 95 miles per hour. And from 96 miles per hour to 110, that's a category 2. A category 3 now would go from 111 to 129. A category 4 from 130 to 156. And a category 5 in excess of 157 miles per hour, of course.
Okay, have we been ever impacted by a category 5 in this country?
Hope not.
No, I
Or the
think
region?
there's one that we would have tracked back in, I think it's 18 something, but no, not to my knowledge. I think then they didn't have categories. They didn't have categories then. So in recent times, no. I think the closest one we had would have been Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Category 4.
Okay, somebody's asking, what does NEMA plan to do with the black tanks that are currently not in use on the mainland, as there are many persons on Union Island who would welcome them? I don't know if you have an answer for that, Miss Nemo.
The tanks have already been allocated to various sectors or agencies. Most of the tanks have really been allocated to the farmers, and the Ministry of Agriculture is really working out the mechanism to get the tanks to their farmers. Other than that, it's mainly for the educational institutions and emergency shelters. I know the various agencies who have the responsibility in terms of erecting the tanks and are working on the logistics to ensure that they have the platforms that can build for the tanks. And I think that has been one of the hold-up in disseminating the tanks to those. But basically the tanks have been already allocated. We don't do tanks to individuals. We have never really done that. We always keep tanks in stock for use in emergencies, mainly for like the BRADSA and the CWSA.
Yeah.
And if we need to take, the CWSA need to take some tanks to the community and so on. That's what we have always been doing. So, but the excess tanks that we received last year, they've really already been allocated to the various agencies. While they're still in stock, they already have their owners, if you want to put it that way.
Okay, well, I think that answers that person's question. I know you like to talk about the whole question of shared responsibility when it comes to NEMO and its work. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Preparedness for emergencies, whether it's a natural hazard, we know that the Ministry of Health, that is one of their motto, health is a shared responsibility, and preparing for emergencies is a shared responsibility, Teresa. And I say this in that we have an individual responsibility to ensure that our own homes, our families are protected in a safe environment from the natural hazards. And there are things that we can do as individuals, and one of the things that we always ask people is to assess your risk. You can do that for yourself. Assess your risk in terms of where you live. What are the hazards that impact your community, your surroundings, or even your home over the years? And if you move into a new community, we need to ask ourselves what has happened in that community before. There are things that we can do. Look at even our structures, see whether we can withstand a storm or hurricane. And if you're looking at even renovating, ensure that you adhere to the building codes, because we think that it's difficult. It's not difficult to adhere to the building codes. We have to ensure that with that responsibility of providing a safe home for ourselves and our families, that we know that we comfortably can withstand a particular category storm or hurricane. And I think that's an individual responsibility that we need to do. There are things that people, in Trinidad, was it when potential tropical cyclone 2 had passed, some of the Trinis were complaining that they bought up all this food, and what they're going to do, they're going to have their parties and so on. It can be used for the next event. You don't know when you're going to have that next event. Look at the food shortages that we are having now. I was saying to some persons, I said, if we do have a big impact now, we are going to have challenges with food, in getting the right food, to support persons, because there's already a shortage on the market. Where are you going to get it from? So we need to ensure that we have that adequate supply of food within our homes and in our homes to support our families, and water. That's the big issue to it. And we live in a country where we have had a reliable water system over the years, and I think we have become complacent. We expect to come and turn off our tap and the CWSA water is going to be there. We saw the disruptions from the volcanic eruptions. We see when we have heavy rainfall, especially now in the northern part of the country. We have to ensure that we have enough of these basic supplies to keep our families going, because at the end of the day, it is a shared responsibility. We all have to play our part in terms of looking at our development and building our resilience. While the country, the NEMOs and the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Mobilization, the Ministry of Housing, Transport and Works, we all have a national responsibility to ensure that public safety is there, to people are safe in general. But we must, as individuals, have to ensure that we too can do our part in building our own resilience at our own local level.
Let's talk about the importance of developing our own family and business emergency plans, and what are the elements that should be contained in these plans. So how does one go about developing such a plan?
So family emergency plan, we're in hurricane season. Let's look at hurricane. We hurricane or tropical storm. We know where we live, what we are prone to. Do we live near the sea? That you can be affected by storm surge. Do we live near the river? That we're going to have river. If once you see heavy rain, then you know you might be flooded. Do we live on a hill in particular where we're going to get the higher winds, for example? So we have to understand our surroundings and know what can impact us. That's number one. If you determine that, hey, my house is not strong enough to withstand a storm, what are you going to do next? Right, and all of these are going to be in your plan. We sit as a family. If you live alone, you need to have a plan to set somebody knows that they're going to either check on you or you're going to go X or Y. Somebody has to know what you're going to do. So you plan that, okay, my house is not structurally sound enough. Where am I going to go? Am I going to stay with a friend or family? Do I have that arrangements made? Do I have enough water in my house stored? Do I have enough food stuff in my house? I know things are a bit challenging. Some people may not be able to have a lot of food stuff, supplies, but we have to try and see what we can do. But we also have to look at the other coping mechanisms that I want to touch on a little bit there, in terms of we need to look at our natural foods, our local foods, so that we go. How are we going to build our resilience? A storm passes through, you may have some bananas left over, you may have some ground provision, you may have some breadfruit. A few years ago, I just want to share this quick story. Someone evacuated from to an emergency shelter, and they brought a whole set of roast breadfruit, and everybody was like, why does man have all this roast breadfruit? He knew the storm was coming, and he roasted all those breadfruit because they can last a while. So that he know that if he have a little piece of chicken, he can roast the chicken and the breadfruit. He can fry the breadfruit with bread and butter, or bread and coconut oil, and it has a nice flavor. And the thing is that we have to look at those coping mechanisms. How do we cope after an event using our local foods also? The plantains, the green bananas, boil some green banana. If you don't have gas, you have to know how to do it on a wood stove or coal pot. We have to go back to some of those basics that a lot of people have forgotten that we need to do, And some person will say, why don't have a generator? I say, why do I need a generator? We have to learn to live, that you have your battery-operated lantern, your battery-operated radio, and know how to survive, some survival skills as we go forward, what I mean? So I'm not going to doubt out the technology, but we have to go back to the basics to know how to cope also in a major event. I know one of my girlfriends after Irma up the islands, she had to get a satellite system because her daughter could not cope without the tablet, so we have to understand how we will go back to some of those coping mechanisms and prepare for emergencies as we did back then. And so in a family emergency plan, you have to have every member of the family has to be involved in the development of the plan, what you're going to do at different stages, and after the event, what you are going to do. And each must understand. I want to ask persons to pay attention to the older persons in your family and those who are more vulnerable, those who have maybe a disability, young children, etc. So because they're the ones that tend to suffer most afterwards, especially the elderly or the physically challenged, and not to forget them. Also plan when you do your plan in mind for the extra medication. Too many times you see persons they don't have their diabetes medication, the hypertensive medication, and so on. They don't have the supply and additional supply of these. Encourage persons to get those supplies now. As you're in the hurricane season, always have an extra supply because you don't know what is going to happen. I know my time is running out, so so you can do a lot of things in terms of family emergency plan. You can write it down if you want, or you can sit down and discuss as a family what each of us are going to do before, during, and after the event.
And you really don't need any training to do
No,
that.
you don't.
So,
You don't. We have a little booklet that we use that children can use to color that tells your family emergency plan. You can go on any website. You can get it with the Red Cross. And you must also have a go-to bag, what we call a grab-and-go bag, where you have quick things that you can already pack there, that you can go. Your documents, you need to have your documents secure, because one of the first things after a storm, your passport damage, your ID gone, your birth certificate gone. These are things that people don't pay attention in securing. There are things you can do too, in terms of if you know that you think that your house roof may blow off, you can wrap your clothes in garbage bags and tie them up, so that even event that the roof goes off and water wets, it might be tossed around, but they will be dry in the bag. You can cover your bed in with plastic bags and so on, so that even if the roof goes off, your mattress doesn't get soaked. The simple things that you can do it in your home to really, so that when the hazard has passed, that you can try and get things back quickly.
Last thing, emergency shelters for 2022. So you know them offhand?
I wouldn't know them offhand. There were, I think, about 140 something emergency shelters.
Something.
Yeah, this year.
So it's important that everybody knows
where these shelters are, especially if you know that you may have to use it, because there may not be a shelter within your community. Because they're not, especially in your communities, you may not have a public building within that community that you may need to shelter. So you need to know where your shelter is, because you may have to travel over to the next village, for example, to get to it, and basically, have an idea of who the person, the shelter manager is for that particular shelter. So it's a by law we have to publish a list of emergency shelters every year. The assessments were done by the relevant agencies, Transport and Works, Physical Planning, etc., and they are the ones who actually put together the list and say, well, these are the buildings that we consider as structurally sound to withstand a storm or hurricane.
Okay, we started with you. You have the last word, the last say.
Okay. Basically, we are as aforementioned, we expect a quite busy season. Right, we are actually in the season. I would like for the folks to actually inspect the roofs, make the necessary repairs, know the location of your nearest emergency shelter, clear nearby drains, cut the overhanging trees and so forth. Just be prepared, basically, as we know what we are expecting this season.
Okay, that's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you also to Miss Michelle Forbes and Mr. Gregory Cato.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. Have a pleasant Wednesday evening. Good day.